today we are fortunate to have one of our fan favorites, as we like to say, a
Yes.
listener favorite, a
Yeah.
perennial favorite,
Yep.
and a good friend of ours. Mary
Yep.
Lee LaBay is joining us. I don't know if Holiday Talk is going to sneak its way in or come down the
You never
chimney.
know.
We'll find out, but we're delighted that Mary Lee LaBay has joined us in the studio, and here you are with mad props to read. You can read the whole 9 yards.
You know what? I'm going to keep it very brief because I want to get to our conversation with her.
Let's do it now.
So all I'm going to tell you about Mary Lee LaBay, PhD. She's the author of 5 books on hypnotherapy, past life regression, self-hypnosis, strategies of personal philosophy, and relationships. Her book, Hypnotherapy, A Client-Centered Approach, and Exploring Past Lives, Your Soul's Quest for Consciousness are 2 of the biggies. She has served on the board of directors for the local chapters of National Guild of Hypnotists and Washington Hypnosis Association. We are happy to have her for the 11th time on Mantz and Mitchell. I looked this up, this important information. We've been, this is our 13th year on air. And she has now come on in double digits for time number 11. So we are very happy to have her in studio and with us today, Mary Lee LaBay. How are you doing today, Mary Lee?
Oh, great. And good morning, Gary and Suzanne. I had no idea it was 11 times. That's great.
That's a lot of times.
That's an awesome number, too. Very magical.
It is. It is. And we always have such great conversations with you. And we talked a little bit about the kinds of things that we want to discuss today. And they are all intriguing, interesting, and exciting for me. And I'm really glad that you are in studio so that we can tackle some of these consciousness ideas and where you stand with the whole thing.
Suzanne, wait a minute. Suzanne,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember, did we ever do the past life regression I promised you?
No.
Oh, my gosh.
However, yes and no. No, we
Okay.
didn't do it live.
Oh.
But you have a CD about past life
Right.
regression. And I did a past life using your CD. And I absolutely know that it was true and real because even today, sitting here right now, years later, I can see every single detail of that past life. And it was excellent. And I used the CD. I said next time I see you in person, we will do that. And
Let's
then
do it,
our
yeah.
schedule got crazy and we didn't. But you know, that's still on the horizon.
Yes, and I also do sessions over Zoom, so we can always do that at a distance as well. But I would love to do that with you. Yeah, because, we're going to go for number 12 on this, on the interviews, and we'll have to have a live past life a session to talk about.
Well, and that's one of the things I'm really interested in, although the first thing that I want to tell you actually started yesterday. Gary and I interviewed Dr. Bernie Siegel, author of Love, Medicine, and Miracles from the 1980s, and he's still going strong. And one of the things that he talked about was a near-death experience that he had where his soul left his body, and he met his spirit guide, whose name was George.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think he met the spirit guide in the near-death experience, but later he met this man in a past life regression, in a hypnotherapy session.
Oh.
He met his spirit guide named George. And we didn't get into it yesterday, but we have already told the story before, how Gary and I met our gatekeepers, one of each of our spirit guides, when we went to Lilydale in New York and went into a workshop where we were relaxed and with a huge group of people, 30 or 40 people, and using a dowsing rod, we were to come up with the name of our spirit guide, our gatekeeper, and going through every single person in the room, almost everybody in the room got the name correct according to the dowsing rod. I was actually just one letter off. but it was interesting to go through that. And so when one of the things that we were talking about today was going to be spirit guides, I thought it's really interesting that Dr. Siegel yesterday talked about having met his spirit guide, and much, much later, somebody drew a picture of it. A medium who saw Dr. Siegel's spirit guide drew it and then said there was a spirit standing with you while you were talking, and I drew it and I wanted to show it to you. And Dr. Bernie Siegel looked at it and said, "Oh, that's George."
Oh.
George was there. So he knew what George even looked like. I don't know what my spirit guide looks like, and I've heard that we each have more than one, but I wanted you to talk a little bit about spirit guides for yourself. I mean, do you know who they all are? Is there one? Is there more than one? Do you have names? Talk a little bit about yours, and then we'll kind of get into that.
Well, I mean, it's a huge topic, first of all, but so as far as their appearance, well, for mine, I've had several over time. So even in this lifetime, I've had spirit guides who have come and gone. I have one that has stuck around for a little bit longer. But as you grow and change, your needs will change and your spirit guides would likely change. Just like as you learn and grow in life, your teachers may change, or the people that you hang out with or go to for therapy or wisdom or whatever, or for help. And so they have changed over my lifetime. Various guides have been there. I used to do spirit guide drawings. I haven't really done too much of it for the last decade or so. I've gotten a little rusty, but I have a whole collection of drawings that I've done on my guides and guides of people around me. And so that was kind of fun. But when we talk about the appearance of guides, remember that most spirit guides have incarnated many times, and oftentimes the guides that are around us have been with us in many different lifetimes. And so your spirit guide may come to you and project a certain appearance. So the way that they're projecting their appearance and then the way that you're interpreting that vision or that thought pattern, because they don't actually have a physical body in the spiritual world or in the astral where they would reside. It's more of how you remember them or how you're interpreting their energetic field. So, for instance, I had a spirit guide that was helping me for a period of time. She was more of a temporary period. But she would come to me in 4 different forms, depending on what she and I would be working on or discussing. So she was actually between incarnations. So she was getting ready to incarnate again, which of course limited her time with me as a spirit guide. But she had been my mother in a lifetime, a very wise and wonderful, magical mother, many, centuries ago. And so she would come to me at times when I needed a mother or that kind of advice or that more witchy wisdom of a woman. Excuse me. She would come to me in that form, and I would see her looking a lot like how I remembered my mother in that other lifetime. And then in another period of life or another lifetime, she had been a knight and I was in court. So I knew her as a man, a warrior. And so when we would be talking strategy or how, protections and different things like that, she would come to me looking like this knight. And so, but I knew it was the same guide as the one that looked like my mother. And then she looked like how she looked in this most recent incarnation, because I had a picture of her because she was a friend of a friend. So I knew what she looked like, and sometimes she would just come to me looking like her. And then she would also practice being a baby because she knew she was going to incarnate soon. So at times she would come and she would be in the form of a baby. So when we're looking at our spirit guides, we have to remember that there are just a lot of forms, and that would be natural. For instance, you've had an infinite number of incarnations, and so have I. So let's say that I die and I decide I'm going to go visit Suzanne and maybe hang around and be her guide for a little period of time, maybe help her through a certain thing or a lesson or something. So it would be typical that when I'd show up, if you could see me, you'd think, oh my gosh, there's Mary Lee. She's my spirit guide. She's come to me after death to hang out with me. But if we're both cognizant of many other lifetimes, I might appear to you to be that other incarnation. Or if I think, if I go and help Suzanne and I come as Mary Lee, she's going to think, that's just Mary Lee. I want somebody, more awesome and magical. Then maybe I would come to you from appearing when I was a druid in some lifetimes. And so maybe I would come to you and project this awesome male druid, powerful being that is true for my energetic field. But then you look and you say, wow, I've got this amazing druid as a spirit guide. And maybe for you, then that adds credence to the advice that I would give you, or the wisdom or the lessons I set up for you. So it can be, there's so much to this topic. And there's so many variables. Yeah.
There are so many threads. And one in particular that interests me is, like, in this dimension, most of the time, I'm pretty independent, and so I figure out what I want to do and I go do it. Mm-hmm. There are times, of course, where you need help. Mm-hmm. And so I'll say, Gary, would you carry this in for me? Or I'll call a girlfriend and say, I'm kind of struggling with what to say here to somebody. Mm-hmm. Or I'll talk to my brother and say, let me lay out this scenario for you. And so there are times when I can do things on my own. And then there are times when I need other people's help, either physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. I need help from other people here.
Right.
I don't think about that very often from the spirit world. It's like, I know somebody's watching over me, several somebodies, and they're doing whatever it is they're doing. My parents are on the other side. Maybe they check in from time to time. But I don't think about asking. Mm-hmm. And during this week, earlier in the week, I all of a sudden said to myself, and I don't know where the thought came from, they're not going to help unless I ask for it. Uh-huh. I don't have people here interfering until I ask. Gary, could you move this for me? Or, my brother, can you help me with this? They're always willing and say yes.
So you're saying that Gary doesn't just get up and say, you know what, I think I need to move this.
Actually, he does that too.
Oh,
he does
good.
That also.
Good. I wanted you to have the opportunity to explain that too.
But I thought, I need to connect more by asking for something, because that does two things, Mary Lee. One is that I could actually get the help that I need.
Sure.
And the other is I can prove to myself that there is another dimension and other energies who are standing by. And so earlier this week, I asked for two very specific things. And I think for the most part, I was doing it quietly in prayer. But then when I knew I was alone for a moment, I actually asked out loud and said, these are the two things I need help with. And I have to tell you, Mary Lee, that there was a shift that occurred in a brief period of time where those two things I was getting answers to.
Isn't that cool?
And it wasn't from anybody on this side.
Yeah.
It was from the bodies, not the bodies, but the energies from the other side. And I don't think about that very often, that to ask for help, not only from people here, but from people over there.
Right.
So when you're coaching people and talking people, do you tell them, to talk to their spirit guides, to ask for help, to, get information from another realm? Is that something that you do with people when you're working with them?
Sure. And one of the things that came to mind when you were talking was I talked to my guide one time and something had come up. I don't remember the specifics. And I said, well, why didn't you just take care of that for me? Princess that I am, right? Why didn't you just, tell me or fix that or, open some opportunity or whatever? I said, why didn't you just do that? And he said, it's not our life to live. And if we don't have specific, let's call it instructions from you or, then we're not going to move ahead for you. We need to know that that's the decision that you've made. And it was for me a real learning opportunity as to how to interact with guides. I just figured they were looking over me, and if something came up, they would just kind of, brush it, or smooth it over or whatever. And that's not really their job. My spirit guides, their job seems to be making the hardest lessons for me so that I can move along faster, I guess. But for them, there's a couple things. One is there would have to be a distinct decision on the part of the person that, this is what I want. Because if they see it, if they read it as wavering, that I want that, but I don't want that. For instance, maybe you want to lose weight, but you really don't want to be thin because it might draw too much attention or, we always have those secondary gains, right? So they're not going to make the decision for you. They're going to wait until you've made that decision, and then therefore there is a request. So that request would be good. But the other thing I think that we need to keep in our mind is they are not our servants. They are with us because they are getting something out of it, whether it's, out of love, like a mother might help their child just because they are their child, or maybe in the case of a spirit guide, there could be the love, but there also could be a symbiotic relationship of, we're both here to save the environment. So they may be available to create opportunities or move energy to help you, but you're on the physical able to vote or go out and pick up trash or separate your garbage. You can be on the physical doing work that they can't do. So there's a trade between you, an energetic trade. And so with my guides, I always try to figure out how can I be of service to them as well as expecting them to do something for me. I don't want to just be a spoiled person, expecting them to be my servant.
Well, that's a good point. Yes, that does make sense. I remember in the movie Michael with John Travolta, there's a point in time when one of the other characters was talking to him about being an angel, and he said, and they said something like, "Oh, well, like you help people find parking spaces, that kind of thing."
Right.
and they were, like giving him the business, and he said, "Hey, I don't make fun of what other angels do." And so, when we're asking for things, we learn in religious science that in the world of the divine, there is no big or small. You might need a parking spot. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want something bigger for you. It doesn't mean that it's bigger for the universe. It's all the same, whether it's a parking space or $1 million or whatever it is. It is in the universe. getting the thing that you're trying to get is just another day at the office. You're the one that has to, mentally wrap your mind around the fact that you can get that. And when you develop a muscle, like always getting a good spot or always having something good happen in your life that you can count on regularly, it kind of gives you the confidence to expand that and go out and try to do it in another area. And
sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a good test. What I do though is I like to get my parking spots too, but when I'm driving somewhere, I'll say, okay, if it's in my best interest, I'd like to have a really great parking spot, right? But that parking spot might be further away because in my best interest, I need a little more exercise. Or maybe if I parked right up front, my car was going to get hit or banged up, and therefore the parking spot is a little further away or in a different place. Because that is in my best interest. Or because I parked over here, I'm going to run into a person that I really wanted to meet or see, and that would be in my best interest, even though that would not have been the parking spot I would have chosen. So I always put that caveat. If it's in my best interest, or get me the best spot for my best interest. Please, and I'll try to be good and do something for you too, right? I mean, it's like a friendship. Treat it like a friendship. You don't want to hang around with somebody that's just always taking energy from you and asking you to do things. Here, help me move. Here, help me carry my groceries. Here, help me do this, but never offering back, right? Or providing back. And so treat it like a friendship. They will be a lot happier to help you out. And part of it, getting those better and better spirit guides, the more advanced spirit guides, sometimes it's just a matter of, I liken it to being, let's say, a college professor, and you might have some students in the room who are just really lazy and they skip out on class and they don't really care. They still want an A, but they don't want to do the work. And then you have that student who is just working so hard and coming into the office and asking questions and kind of doing extra work. Which of those students is the professor going to favor or give extra attention to? It's going to be that student that's really working on that subject in that class. And so if you're a person who's really working on your spiritual growth and on whatever it is that you do that is attracting that spirit guide, they're going to be a lot more interested in you.
I like that. I had never heard it put that way before.
I haven't either. Very good.
And always remember to say please and thank you. That's the gospel according to Captain Kangaroo.
There you go. Yeah.
Mary Lee, if people would like to connect with you, I know you have a website and social media and all that good stuff. And on top of that, I also would like you to talk about a very special thing that you are doing in February, because it is not too soon for people to be planning 2020, and you've got something pretty extraordinary coming up in February. So please talk about all of that. How can people find you, and what do you have going on here in a couple months?
Well, they can find me on my website, which is my name. So Mary Lee LaBay, MaryLeelabay.com. And the February event that you're talking about is a 4-day training, or about 3.5-day training, and it's called Spiritual Exploration. And we are going to cover soul retrieval, spirit guide communication, sacred journeys, and we're going to talk about entities and aliens, more of an overview and kind of an in-depth overview about that. But it is a professional training, so not only are they going to learn about the topics and practice them and experience these techniques, but they're going to learn how to apply the techniques so that they can do it for other people. So the class is heavily populated typically with mental health counselors, hypnotherapists, coaches, massage therapists, people who holistic healers, people who are working with other people, naturopaths, acupuncturists. We have, a wide variety, but you don't have to have that background if you simply want to learn the techniques and experience these things. Oh, so it's February 20 through 23. So it starts at 4:00 on Thursday, and it goes through 2:00 on Sunday. So Thursday night, all day Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday morning till 2 in the afternoon.
Excellent. Well, thank you for mentioning that. When you're mentioning aliens and entities, I heard yesterday from someone, and it kind of made sense to me, that angels may be entities if angels never had human form. And so they may show up in kind of a little thing with wings on them, or however we picture angels, but it's that angelic realm which is putting themselves into the type of form that we can understand or accept, but they may not have ever had a human body. Have you heard that before?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the terminology is different. When you talk about an entity, the definition of an entity is an individual. So in reality, we are all entities. But when we use the term entity for the astral or for spirits, then all of them are typically entities. And then you can break that down into categories because under that umbrella term of entities would be angels and demons and fairies and every other kind of creature, any other kind of individual, whether it's humanoid or other kind of creature, would be an entity. So that's how I use the term. So when we talk about entities in that class, we're actually going to learn about all the different classifications and categories and their attributes and how they function and how long they last, if they incarnate or don't incarnate, that sort of thing. We're going to get into details about what all these different entities are. And aliens are entities because they are also conscious beings. But we call them aliens because because they're from a different planet or different time space.
Right. Could be just different time space, not even a different planet, just a different realm of origination.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I went to your website, MaryLeeLaBay.com. We looked under spiritual exploration, and there I read through, Gary and I both read through what you're doing in February, which sounds really intriguing. And there was one thing in particular that Gary said, oh, I want to ask her about that. So.
Why, thank you, Suzanne, for setting that up.
Hi, Gary. What do you want to know?
Well, I thought I would like to hear about the distinction that you draw between philosophy, which as a subject is a rather large umbrella, and a particular phrase that I associate with you, sense of life. Uh-huh. Do you contrast philosophy of whatever stripe with a sense of life, which seems to me to be more intimate, more involved with the individual personality?
So philosophy is a rationally chosen way of thinking about life, right? And we can kind of talk more about philosophy. And then sense of life is our emotional response to that. So it's our habits, our emotions, our knee-jerk reactions. It's how I feel about my experiences in life. And then philosophy is how do I think about it and what am I going to choose for myself. So the topic of philosophy actually has 5 branches. I'll just talk about that briefly because it's a little bit of an in-depth topic. But metaphysics is the first branch of philosophy, and it answers the question, what is real, or what is real? So while in the New Age we use the term metaphysics to maybe define or label anything that is beyond the physical or something that's spiritual. It is in reality just the study of reality itself. So metaphysics is the study of reality. Then ethics is the second branch, and that's our morality for ourselves. It's our value systems. It's what's important to us, and it answers the question, how am I going to behave based on my knowledge? I'm sorry, I did that wrong. The second branch is epistemology. Epistemology is how do we know it? So metaphysics, what is reality? Epistemology, how do we know that? So it's the research, it's the feedback, it's, how do we know that something is real? And that one is skipped over a lot, unfortunately, in the spiritual, in the sense of life and in spirituality, it's skipped over because we think something's real and we just carry on from there without really doing the feedback and the research. Number 3 is ethics. So based on those two, metaphysics and epistemology, how am I going to behave? What are my values? And then politics is the 4th branch of philosophy. Based on reality, how do I know it, and my values and morality, then how am I going to treat other people, the environment, anything that is outside of me? That would be politics. And then the 5th branch is aesthetics. How do I express my philosophy? So it's, we see it through music, art, drama, theater, any kind of art, ballet, dance, in our expression of our philosophy. And so all of that is rationally chosen and understood, logically thought out, where the sense of life is our emotional response to that. And it's the difference between those oftentimes that brings a person in for therapy, because there is a disconnect. Maybe my parents love me, but I don't feel like they do. And so, that's just a simple example, and there's the examples go on and on. But those are a lot of the disconnect between those two sides, or the dysfunction on the sense of life. But we can have dysfunction on the philosophy side too. So does that help
Certainly
you, Gary?
It does. We have dysfunction. We also have lots of disagreements because everybody's entitled to their point of view, which itself is subject to change over time.
Right. And our point of view can be very much influenced by our sense of life. But then, we kind of, I don't know, we put that aside, but then we try to argue philosophy, or let's say politics. We try to, maybe convince each other that my view is correct, but we're both being influenced by the colored lens of our sense of life.
Well, I'm really thinking about what it is that you're saying. And,
is that too complex? It's a lot. I teach
deep.
it. Yes,
Yeah,
I teach it in my classes.
There.
Yeah, we have more time to really get into it in the class.
One of the things that I've brought up several times on the radio, and in fact I did it recently, was, when you get up in the morning, asking yourself, is life for me or is life against me? There's a particular lens that we live our lives through. We're either constantly fighting for survival, fighting for our own being, or we're trusting that life is always looking out for us and is working for our good.
Right.
And so I'm not sure where that falls.
That's sense of life.
That is sense of life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Our perspective of that, because there are people who say, nothing will ever go right for me, and, have that perspective, or the cup is always half empty. It has that perspective, and a person living right next to them or having almost the same experience might say everything goes well for me, or a lot of things go well for me, and the cup is half full. And it's funny because I woke up this morning with this idea of of what I'm going to instigate this in my life now is excuse me, in the morning, asking myself, how can I make this the best day of my life? And I thought, I want to start doing that. I just came to me. I'm sure my spirit guide probably talked to me about that in the astral last night. But that's what I woke up with, is trying to make each day the best day of my life. It's going to be hard to match that that early Christmas event, when you're a kid and you're opening presents.
Right.
But every day could have at least a little portion of it, or at least I can strive to arrange my day so that there are those peak moments. Why not?
To me, it sounds hugely ambitious, Mary Lee. And I like the fact that you're connected in that way to this life, where you can say, how could this be my best life? I'm a doer person. And so I'm saying, what can I get done today that will move my life forward?
Okay, that would be the same thing. Yeah.
It would be, except that I like yours better.
Oh, okay. Well, you can come on board. You can take mine.
But when I look at that, I say, oh, no, I couldn't do that, because somehow my best day, in my mind, I'm thinking that would be like all fun all day long. That wouldn't be like work and getting things done. And
maybe getting things done makes it a really good day for you, because that's so satisfying. So it could be really productive. I'm like that. I'm a very productive person. I go right to productivity. So that can be part of the really good day. But then, getting out and playing is something I'm short of also. So, adding that in. Like today, I woke up and I thought, this is an awesome day. I get to be on the radio with Gary and Suzanne. I'm leaving here and going to lunch with a dear old friend that we've been friends for 20 years. I'm so excited. And I thought, how does life get better than this? Right? It's productive. I'm still going to go home and, do a lot of things for my business. I'm working on knitting projects now, so I'm going to move that forward. And I'm going to have dinner with my husband. This is a great day.
I get the feeling that sense of life has a great deal to do with your perspective on life.
Yes.
You've used the word perspective a couple of times.
Yes.
So when you see the good life, you're experiencing the good life. The philosophy seems more left-brained, thinking about life as opposed to experiencing life.
Exactly. It is. There is a difference there. And our values are on the philosophy side, and it should be a rationally chosen, and that's one of the things I do with all of my clients is we set up their value system, because where those are at odds with our sense of life. In other words, if I say, I want to focus on my spirituality, I want to meditate, I want to eat well, I want to be healthy, I want to be fit, and yet in my real life, in my day-to-day life, I don't really have time to meditate. I'm not going to go to the gym today, and it won't matter if I eat pie for breakfast, and then there's that, probably some guilt, or there's going to be a bit of stress, and it's going to be, over time, a little dysfunctional in my life when my true values are one thing and the way I'm behaving is different. That would be called a sin. That's the definition of a sin, is when you know better and you choose to do wrong. That's a sin. If you didn't know and you didn't have a value system, which, I guess maybe that's the excuse for a lot of people, is if I don't make my value system, then I'm never at odds or out of integrity. But if we want to have integrity to that, we look for that when I'm working with clients. We look for those where that is out of order, and then we figure out why. Where's the secondary gain? Why would I be making those choices even though what I say I want is different? That's self-sabotage. And then find that resolution and get people back on track for living their best life. And then it becomes easy to have every day be the best day because you're living according to your values, and you're having that integrity and not at odds with yourself.
Well, I really like what you said there, because you're really identifying a lot of people's stress as being that disconnect.
It is.
The disconnection between your perspective on life and what you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're thinking one thing, you're seeing and doing something else, and then you're causing your own stress by the fact that you're not, those things are out of alignment. They're not whole, as you said, integrity. There's no integrity because they're not put together.
And you're not getting your own true needs met, or maybe not fulfilling your own purpose. You know what I mean? And so, then it's, then you start to see it overeating and doing drugs and alcohol and being angry and having dysfunctional relationships and having resentment and, passive aggressive behaviors, and you see all of this stuff start to happen. But this is what I do in my private practices. We start sorting all this out so that every day can at least have a chance of being your best day. I mean, it's
another great conversation, Mary Lee. Thank you so much for coming in studio and coming on air with us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
I want to wish you a wonderful holiday season.
You as
Give
well.
our best to Dr. Scott.
I will do that.
And
you guys
safe
have
travels.
fun. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I hope your holidays are amazing and magical.
I like that. Back at you.
All right. Thank you.